Alright, so the Hasan Piker doxing situation just got even worse, with one of the content creators who got doxed, named Hutch, saying that he's now considering a defamation lawsuit. Alright, so this stuff goes back to a tweet that Bad Empanada put out that said, yes, if you look through Progressive Victory's public filings, it's got tons of payouts to Destiny Orbiters. Among them, Dylan Burns, Hunter Avallone, Hutch, and Destiny's own personal chef. And of course, I've not shown what he actually showed. He, in that red spot, put the personal information of these people. So of course, I don't want to show that. And so here, he mentions Progressive Victory. And basically, Progressive Victory is a political action committee in the US. And generally, they want to support progressive content creators and people like that. And from what I understand, overall, there's been this controversy where people are saying that, Progressive Victory paid out certain content creators so that they would make content in line with what Progressive Victory wanted them to make, the kind of narrative that they wanted to create. And so keep in mind that this was a tweet that Hasan Piker actually showed on stream, live with all of his viewers watching. He showed this with the personal information of these people, and he didn't blur it out or anything. So here's a clip of that, and keep in mind that for this clip, it's blurred out. But just know that when Hasan was showing it on his stream, it wasn't blurred out. Okay, so let's check this out.
Yeah, Dylan Burns, Hunter Avallone, Hutch, Destiny's own personal chef. This is what happened. This is what took place. Okay, and the pack actually did, unironically, raise a bunch of money off of people who thought that they were giving money to a political action committee that was going to go around and do door knocking canvas operations, which they did.
Alright, so yeah, as you just saw, he showed it on stream. And so now, the thing is that one of the people being talked about in this situation was Hutch, a content creator. And so Hutch, seeing all of this, said that he's actually considering a defamation lawsuit because of what's being said about him. And so now, let's take a look at a clip of that.
To be honest with you, man, I have thought about should I go talk to a defamation lawyer? I'm thinking about it, to be honest with you, because it's so egregious. But I don't know, man. I just from everything I've read, defamation stuff is just really hard to prove, and it's a big old headache, and I just don't know. But I don't know. I feel like I have a legitimate grievance here. I'm for sure pissed off about this whole thing, and it is impacting me because his followers are spamming my feed with these defamatory claims. I feel I don't know how to establish reputational harm or any kind of damages that I've incurred financially because of this, but if random people that don't follow me see one of my posts and then they pull up one of my posts and they look at the replies and they're seeing a bunch of people accusing me of this thing, that might make a lot of people be like, oh, I don't want to do, and I don't like this creator. It'll cost $500,000 plus. It'll have a hard path in California. It'll pry into everything in your personal life. Yeah, that's the other thing. But I for sure have a legitimate grievance here. The malicious nature of it is just what really gets to me.
Alright, so as you just saw right there, Hutch said that he was thinking that, maybe he should talk to a defamation lawyer. So yeah, things are definitely starting to get pretty serious. And potentially, instead of this just being this internet thing, it could now have real world consequences because, of course, a lawsuit is this real world problem. And it started because of all of this. And so, in the clip, you can see how he recognizes that, even though, yes, he's considering this, it's just very complicated and it's pretty risky at the end of the day. A defamation lawsuit, it's pretty tricky, and there's a number of reasons for that. And the thing is that, when you're somebody who's in this situation now, you have to prove that this indeed was the case, so that's a very difficult thing to do, to be very fair. And you have to like prove that you ended up being harmed by that statement and all that. And I believe it's like the harm could be financial or professional or emotional harm. And definitely like financial harm is one of those things where like you can quantify it. There's numbers involved here, you can actually calculate it. But also there's that thing where you can say, oh, it harms my reputation and all that. And I believe that's a bit more tricky, because it's one of those kind of like subjective kind of things, right? Like it's not like there's pure like numbers involved here, right? So it's quite subjective, right? Like one person could look at it and be like, yeah, your reputation really did get harmed by this. But then another person could take a look at it and go, actually, I don't think it was that big of a deal. And, I just think it was like fair criticism or whatever, right? So this is one of those things where like, it's kind of hard to really determine it. And it's just very subjective, right? So it's pretty hard to like predict what the outcome is going to be. And so, other than all that, right? Other than that, keep in mind how in this situation, your personal life is definitely going to be really, really affected by this. Because, with such court cases, what ends up happening is that, a lot of the evidence really is stuff that has to do with your personal life. And so, you're going to end up seeing a lot of that stuff get, shown publicly. And, it's, of course, like that's the nature of this kind of lawsuit. This is a defamation lawsuit. This has to do with a person's reputation. And so, a lot of that evidence and stuff like that the courts want to see, that's stuff that, under normal circumstances, if some kind of like lawsuit wasn't going on, you would keep to yourself. You would want to keep those things private. But of course, given the kind of circumstances you end up in situations like this, that kind of stuff ends up being, shown to so many different people. And, that's pretty stressful. And, it's just not really a good situation to be in. And, speaking of the stress, these things can drag on for like, months or even years, depending on various factors. And so, that entire time you're going to be constantly worried that, oh, I have this like lawsuit going on. And, it's always going to be at the back of your mind. And I think that it's just one of those things where, it's going to be a lot harder to just relax and enjoy life if you're in that kind of situation. And also in terms of the costs, it's pretty crazy. These things can cost a lot. This YouTuber, Legal Mindset, he actually said that, although it wouldn't cost something like $500,000, it would probably cost something in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So still a lot of money, And, speaking of all that, like those expenses and stuff like that, keep in mind that in most cases, from what I know, these kinds of lawsuits end with a settlement. So, there's really no guarantee, or should I say there's actually like a very high chance that you're not gonna get the kind of like public victory that you're trying to get out of this situation, but rather it's just gonna end with a settlement. So you would have spent all that time and all those resources, and on top of that, you're constantly stressed throughout that process, and you've done all of that just so that in the end, it's not even really like a clear victory for you, right? So, at that point, it's like, a lot of people look at it and they think to themselves, what, this doesn't really seem worth it. You could go ahead, but at the same time, you're going to be the one who has to prove that this really is the case, And there's just so many factors that you can't control in this situation. And the thing is that people in lawsuits in general, like not just this specific case of like a defamation lawsuit, but lawsuits more generally, it's a bad situation to be in. You really don't want to end up in that situation. It's stressful, it's difficult, it drags on, and you never know when it's actually going to end, and there's so much uncertainty, and it starts to like take over other aspects of your life. And I'm sure at some point it's gonna be one of those things where like it's just constantly on your mind. It's just gonna ruin like whatever happiness you have and like the joy you get out of other things in life. So you really have to think to yourself, like, really, do you want to get yourself into this situation? Because getting into it, that's the easy part, but getting out of it, that's the difficult part. But hey, anyway guys, those were just my thoughts on the situation, and now I'm interested in hearing what you think down in the comments below. So leave a comment letting me know what you think, and we can have a discussion down there. And with all that being said guys, this is Alexi, signing out.